They tortured her, broke her legs, left her for dead, but the Gestapo never got what they wanted. And after she escaped, she went back to work, saving more children under their noses. This is the story of Irena Sendler, a Polish social worker who walked into the most dangerous place in Nazi-occupied Europe. Not once, but hundreds of times. She didn't carry a weapon. She didn't have an army. All she had was a nursing permit, a fake ID, and a plan so dangerous that one mistake would have killed her and every child she tried to save. By the time the war ended, she had smuggled out over 2,500 children from certain death, and most people have never even heard her name. September 1939, Germany invades Poland. Within weeks, the entire country is under Nazi control. Warsaw, the capital, becomes a city of terror. The occupation is brutal. Public executions in the streets, mass arrests, families torn apart in the middle of the night. But the worst was yet to come, because in October 1940, the Nazis issued an order that would seal the fate of nearly 500,000 people. Every Jewish person in Warsaw had to move into a single district, a few square blocks in the center of the city. No exceptions, no delays. They called it a ghetto, but it was a death trap. Brick walls went up almost overnight, 15 feet tall, topped with barbed wire and broken glass. Guards at every gate. Nobody in, nobody out. Inside, the conditions were unimaginable. Families of 10 crammed into single rooms. No heat in the winter, no clean water. Food rations so small that people were starving in the streets. Children begging with empty bowls. Bodies left on the sidewalks because there was nowhere else to put them. Disease spread like wildfire. Typhus, tuberculosis, dysentery. And the Nazis? They didn't care. In fact, they wanted it that way. The ghetto wasn't just a prison. It was a slow execution, a place where people would waste away until the trains came to take them somewhere even worse. Most people on the outside looked away. It was easier that way, safer. The punishment for helping Jews was death, not just for you, for your entire family. The Nazis made that very clear. They hung people in public squares as a warning, so most people stayed quiet, kept their heads down, told themselves there was nothing they could do. But not Irena Sendler. Irena was 30 years old when the war started. She worked as a social worker for the Warsaw Social Welfare Department. Before the occupation, she had spent her days helping the poor, the sick, the forgotten. She wasn't a soldier, wasn't politically connected, just a woman who believed that every life mattered. And when the ghetto walls went up, she couldn't look away. She had Jewish friends trapped inside, families she had worked with, children she knew by name, and she made a decision that would change everything. She was going in, but how? The ghetto was sealed, guarded day and night. Anyone caught trying to sneak in would be shot on sight. So Irena did something brilliant. She got herself a permit. The Nazis were terrified of disease spreading from the ghetto into the rest of Warsaw, so they allowed a small number of nurses and health workers to enter, officially to monitor for outbreaks of typhus and other contagious diseases. Irena worked for the health department. She had the credentials. She applied for the permit and got it. The Nazis had no idea what they had just done. They had given her the keys to their prison. The first time Irena walked through the ghetto gates, she was horrified. Nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. Skeletal children digging through garbage for scraps of food. Mothers holding babies who were too weak to cry. The smell of death everywhere. People collapsing in the streets from hunger and exhaustion. And the looks in their eyes. The hopelessness. The desperation. It broke her. But it also made her more determined. Because she realized something that day. If she didn't do something, these people were going to die. Every single one of them. And nobody would remember their names. So she started small. Smuggling food, medicine, money. She wore a coat with deep pockets and lined them with supplies. Bread, milk powder, medicine for sick children. She bribed the guards with cigarettes and vodka to look the other way. She learned their schedules, their blind spots, their weaknesses, and slowly she built a network. Other social workers who felt the same way she did. Drivers who were willing to take risks. Polish families on the outside who agreed to help, even though they knew the consequences. And then, Irena did something nobody else had dared to try. She started smuggling out children. The plan was insane, dangerous beyond belief, but she couldn't stand by and watch them die. The youngest ones, the babies and toddlers, she hid in the bottom of her medical bag, covered with bandages and supplies. Sometimes she sedated them with sleeping medicine so they wouldn't cry at the checkpoint. Older children, she smuggled out in ambulances, pretending they had typhus or tuberculosis. The guards were so afraid of catching the disease that they barely looked inside. She used coffins, toolboxes, sacks of potatoes, sewer pipes, anything that could hide a small body for just long enough to get past the gates. But getting them out was only half the battle. Once outside, these children needed new identities, new families. The Nazis kept meticulous records. If a Jewish child was caught with a Jewish name, they would be sent back to the ghetto or directly to a death camp. So Irena and her network created false papers, birth certificates with Christian names, baptism records, documents that said these children had been born in small villages far from Warsaw, where records were harder to verify. And then came the hardest part, finding families willing to take them in. This wasn't easy. The risk was enormous. If the Nazis discovered you were hiding a Jewish child, you would be executed. Your whole family would be executed. Your neighbors might be executed just for living near you. The Nazis wanted to make sure nobody even thought about helping. But Irena found people, Polish families who believed in doing the right thing, no matter the cost. Convents and orphanages run by nuns who understood that faith meant action, not just prayer. Farmers in the countryside who had extra space and big hearts. She placed each child carefully, making sure they would be safe, loved, cared for. And then she did something that nobody else thought of, something that would become her greatest legacy. She wrote down their real names. Every single child she saved, she recorded their Jewish name, their new Christian name, and where they had been placed. She wrote it all on thin pieces of tissue paper in tiny handwriting. Then she rolled up the papers, sealed them in glass jars, and buried them in her friend's garden, beneath an apple tree. She knew the war wouldn't last forever, and when it ended, these children would need to know who they really were, where they came from, whether any of their family had survived. Those jars were their only connection to their past, their real identities, their true names. Month after month, Irena kept going, in and out of the ghetto. Every trip was a gamble. Every checkpoint could be the last. The guards were unpredictable. Sometimes they waved her through without a second glance. Other times they searched everything. She learned to stay calm, to smile, to flirt if she had to act like she was just doing her job. But inside, her heart was racing, because hidden in her coat, or in the back of the ambulance, or in the bottom of her bag, was a child whose life depended on her getting through that gate. One mistake, one guard paying too much attention, one child making a sound at the wrong moment, and it would all be over. The ghetto kept getting worse. The Nazis began clearing it out in waves, rounding up thousands of people at a time and loading them onto trains. They told them they were being resettled to work camps in the east, but rumors started coming back. Whispers of places with names like Treblinka and Auschwitz, places where the trains arrived, but nobody ever left. Irena worked faster, more desperately. She knew time was running out. Every child she could get out was one more life saved from the nightmare. By 1943, she had saved hundreds, maybe more than 1,000, but she wanted more, needed more, because every time she left the ghetto, she had to walk past children she couldn't save, children who reached out to her with desperate eyes, and it haunted her. October 20th, 1943, early morning. There was a knock on Irena's door. She opened it and saw them. Gestapo, the Nazi secret police. They had finally caught up to her. Someone had talked, or maybe they had been watching her for weeks. It didn't matter now. They arrested her on the spot, dragged her to Pawiak prison, the most feared place in all of Warsaw, a place where people went in and never came out. They wanted names, the names of the children, the names of the families hiding them, the names of everyone in her network, and they were willing to do anything to get them. The torture started immediately. Beatings, hours of interrogation. They broke her feet, shattered her legs with metal rods. The pain was unimaginable. She passed out multiple times, woke up, and it started again. They told her it would stop if she just gave them the names. Just a few names, that's all, and it would all be over. But Irena said nothing, not a single name, not one location, because she knew what would happen if she talked. Every child she had saved would be rounded up and murdered. Every family who had risked everything to help would be executed. Her entire network would collapse. Hundreds of children would die because of her, so she bit down on the pain and stayed silent. Day after day, week after week, they kept torturing her, and she kept refusing. The Gestapo sentenced her to death. Execution by firing squad. It was scheduled. The date was set. She was moved to a cell with other condemned prisoners, waiting for the morning they would take her out and shoot her. She had accepted it by then. She was going to die. But at least she would die knowing she hadn't betrayed them. The children were safe. The names were safe, buried in glass jars under an apple tree, where the Nazis would never find them. But then something impossible happened. On the morning of her execution, the guards came to her cell. They told her she was being transferred. She thought this was it. They were taking her to be shot, but instead, they walked her out of the prison, handed her papers, and let her go. She couldn't believe it. She was free. It didn't make sense. Until later, when she found out what had really happened. Members of the Polish underground, the resistance fighters working in secret against the Nazis, had bribed the guards a huge sum of money, enough to make them falsify the execution records and release her instead. Officially, according to Nazi documents, Irena Sendler had been executed on that date. She was listed as dead, which meant she was invisible now, a ghost. Most people would have run, hidden somewhere far from Warsaw, and waited for the war to end. She had been tortured, nearly killed. She could barely walk. Her legs were shattered and would never fully heal. She had every reason to disappear, but that's not what Irena did. She took on a new identity, a fake name, different papers, and she went back to work, back to saving children, because the war wasn't over yet. The ghetto was still there. Children were still dying, and as long as she could move, as long as she could breathe, she wasn't going to stop. By the time World War II ended in 1945, Irena Sendler had saved more than 2,500 children, 2,500 lives that would have been erased from history. Every single one of those children survived because she refused to look away, because she walked into danger over and over again, knowing that each time might be the last, because she chose courage over safety, compassion over fear. After the war, Irena dug up the jars from beneath the apple tree. She tried to reunite the children with their families, but most of their parents were gone, murdered in the gas chambers. The children she saved were orphans now, living with the families who had taken them in. Many of them never learned their real Jewish names. They grew up as Polish Christians and never knew the truth about who they had been. But they were alive, and that mattered. For decades, almost nobody knew what Irena had done. Poland fell under Soviet control after the war, and her story was buried. The communist government didn't want to celebrate anyone who had ties to the Polish underground. So she lived quietly, worked as a social worker, raised her own children, never talked much about what she had done during the war. She didn't think of herself as a hero. She said she regretted that she couldn't save more, that she still saw the faces of the children she had to leave behind. It wasn't until 1999 that the world finally learned her name. A group of high school students in Kansas was doing a history project. They stumbled across a brief mention of a Polish woman who had saved thousands of Jewish children during the Holocaust. They couldn't believe the story. It seemed too incredible to be true, so they researched. They found Irena, still alive, 89 years old, living in a small apartment in Warsaw. They told her story, made a play about her life, and suddenly, the world was paying attention. Irena was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007. She didn't win, but that didn't matter, because by then, people knew. They knew what she had done, the risks she had taken, the lives she had saved. She received letters from survivors, people who had been children in the ghetto, and didn't even remember her face, but knew that she was the reason they were alive. Some of them traveled to Warsaw to meet her, to thank her, to tell her that, because of her, they had children and grandchildren, families that existed only because she had been brave enough to act when everyone else looked away. Irena Sendler passed away in 2008 at the age of 98. She never became wealthy, never became famous in the way that some war heroes did. But her legacy is written in the lives of the people she saved. The children who grew up, who had families of their own, who passed down stories of survival and courage because of one woman who refused to stand by and do nothing, who proved that you don't need to be powerful to change the world. You just need to care enough to try. Her story is a reminder that even in the darkest times, when evil seems unstoppable, one person can make a difference. One person with compassion and courage can save thousands, can stand against hate with nothing but love and determination, can risk everything because some things are worth dying for, like the life of a child, like the belief that every human being matters, that every name deserves to be remembered. Irena Sendler was proof that heroism doesn't always look like soldiers and battles. Sometimes it looks like a social worker with a nursing permit and a desperate plan. Sometimes it looks like glass jars buried under an apple tree. Sometimes it looks like someone who gets tortured, escapes death, and then goes right back to work because the job isn't finished yet. That's the kind of courage that changes history. The quiet kind. The kind that doesn't ask for recognition or glory. The kind that just does what needs to be done, no matter the cost. Those 2,500 children grew up in a world that tried to erase them, but they survived. They lived. They mattered because of Irena. And now, decades later, we remember her name. We tell her story. We make sure that what she did is never forgotten, because heroes like her deserve to be remembered, and the children she saved deserve to have their story told. If this story moved you, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.